random trip report by the user Tristan Inkjet, posted to the Shrooms subreddit 5 years ago. I don't know who'd care to read about my trip, but I thought my 12-gram experience was noteworthy enough to share. I grabbed 2 ounces from a guy I met through my weed plug. Allegedly it was straight from Oregon from some clinical stuff. I don't know, probably BS. But anyway, I ended up selling most of it to people around the dorm who I smoked with, and ended up with about 21 left over. So I just said to my friend, "Yo, what kind of stuff do you think I would see if I ate like half of this?" And one thing led to another, and I ended up with a triple-decker peanut butter shroom sandwich, 12 grams in total. Took a goddamn long-ass time to get it down. I've tripped about 40 or so times, and the taste of shrooms is enough to make me vomit my kidneys out. It's so gross. Some bad trip along the way changed that for me. The come-up lasted for an unusually long time. About 2 hours in, I remember talking to my friend about how I wasn't really seeing any changes at all. I could feel the body sensations that I normally get from psychedelics starting to creep in though. With shrooms, the body high makes me feel pretty uncomfortable, even on lower doses, but this was on another level of intensity. I could barely even keep myself from crying because of how intense it was. All I could do was close my eyes and hope that the world around me doesn't consume me up, and my every thought with it. And that is when stuff got very interesting for me. When I closed my eyes, I was met by a dozen or so of these beings that seemed to live inside of me. They looked kinda like elves with a tiny pointed nose and a big mouth full of hundreds of teeth. And as I observed them, I saw these elves operating machinery inside of me, making all of my body parts work. These weren't benevolent woodland elves in my head. These guys were straight demonic. When they came to greet me, I was terrified by the malevolent grins of these unbelievably alien-looking creatures. They also very much wanted out. There were times when I could feel them crawling around my insides, trying to find a way to escape, and that feeling persisted for quite some time. It was very annoying. There were a bunch of people around me in my room at one point, and I was completely gone. I could barely process 1 + 1, and then I got smashed with a freight train of overwhelming sensations. Plus the amount of stuff going on around me made me feel very lost and confused. I finally snapped and said, "Alright everybody, just get out." And then everyone very calmly and quickly left in a single file line. And I was left with just me and my thoughts. Thoughts about why I can't escape my addictions, how I barely scratch the surface of my potential, but instead I mess around and do drugs all the time. And some darker stuff I'd rather not talk about. For a good 1 to 2 hours, I just solidly cried. I've never felt more scared and alone. In my mind, my consciousness was trapped along with those malevolent machine elves. I ended up getting some periodic visitors, and I found myself talking my way out of the bad trip. I started to smile again, and I ended up having a fun night messing around with some friends later on. In summary, there are elves living inside my head, and they hate me, and I'm probably never going to trip above 6 grams ever again. 12 grams of PE, a trip report by Alpha Reddy, posted to the Shrooms subreddit 7 months ago. First off, I'd like to preface this with saying that I'm an experienced mushroom tripper, and I've had plenty of PE experiences as well as macrodoses with other strains of psilocybin. I had the rare moment of having the house to myself for the day, so I cleaned for about 8 hours total before getting comfortable for the ride ahead. Did breathwork all morning as I was cleaning, as well as about 1 hour of breathwork right before the dose. 2 PM launch. Chugged down the medicine with organic lemon juice and chased it with organic coconut water. 2:45 PM. Man, this is when my watch started getting blurry and the visuals started to kick in. For the next hour I had to really hold on to my butt cheeks. It was a ride, it floored me to a bow and lay down and just sit in different positions to bear the come up. The visuals were very NNDMT-like. I had an all-seeing eye morph into a pine cone, morphing into a Buddha head, morph into a cat-like figure dancing, and it also seemed like circuits of energy running through it. As they run through us, I felt like it was teaching me how to allow the circuits to be open in my body so that energy can flow more easily. At 3:30 PM I needed someone to talk to, literally any human connection was needed right now. I hit up some trusted plant medicine buddies, and they really helped ground me. It was the help I truly needed in that moment. For the next 2 hours, I was stretching and allowing the waves to run through me with the strongest visuals and insights of my life. The gist of it all is the oneness, doing this all to itself, for incarnations and incarnations, to know itself and dance as itself. We're all literally made up of each other. We share the same biofield, so the answer is to honour this with the best of one's ability. At 5:30 PM I went live on a Facebook group called Acid Math for about 15 minutes to share the trip with other psychedelic friends. And then for the rest of the trip I enjoyed the feeling of being superhuman. I was hitting the speed bag, doing push-ups and pull-ups with new gear that was feeling Super Saiyan. I was able to hit 10 sets of David Goggins' nickel and dime set, which equaled to 100 push-ups and 50 pull-ups throughout the night. The visuals stopped around hour 6ish, but the feeling behind the trip lasted till 3 AM. I called my family and let them know how much I love them, and I am absolutely in love with life and see it all as an opportunity for learning, growing and helping. All by constantly cleaning and doing the inner work. We're all resources and sources for each other. We're all brothers and sisters. Thank you for helping ourselves and each other. Thank you for reading this trip report and being on the journey with me. We are all in this together, is what I truly learned. We all need each other. May love and truth guide the way. Trying my best to explain a 12-gram trip. A post by WingFabulous1187 to the Shrooms subreddit 2 years ago. Hey everyone. I want to try my best to explain this experience I had just a couple months ago. And PS, I'm going to try my best to explain how I felt, but anybody who has done high doses realises only so much of this can be put into words. I'd done mushrooms and other psychedelics in the past multiple times, but I never went over 2 to 4 grams of mushrooms in the past. With those experiences I never felt like I learnt a lot. Felt like I just got high, and with having substance problems in the past and just getting out of rehab recently, I wanted to have an experience to truly tap into my spirituality. I bought a ½ ounce, got home, ate about 2 grams, and played games for about that whole trip, when I wanted to suddenly eat more. I wasn't weighing them out, I was just taking them out of the bag, watching YouTube, and before I knew it, I had about 2 Gs total left, which I just ended up eating since I was so deep already into it. I was just laying in my bed looking at the ceiling, preparing myself for what was about to happen. No amount of preparation is enough. By the time I was done eating them I wasn't tripping, but I didn't feel right, and before I knew it I already blasted off. I can't remember the whole trip, but when it comes to visuals and audio hallucinations, by the peak everything was triangles back to back with each other, connecting, and I couldn't understand English. The PewDiePie video that was on was complete gibberish, and there was spiky metal rods in the shape of balls floating in the air. Everything around me was morphing together into one. I was merging with my bed, and I even lost my leg under my blanket once my mouth felt like a 3D triangle. And I couldn't even swallow either. I had no saliva in my mouth and it felt like my skin was falling off. It didn't hurt, but if I would lick my lips it would feel like they came off with my tongue. Everything was one, and I was melting into the world. When it comes to my mental state, I was stuck in my head completely. Even though I was so high, I was almost sober in my head. I knew how to stay calm, and I kept telling myself I was going to be okay. But that was my ego on top. Deep down, I was thinking, what if I never stopped tripping? Because I fried my whole brain. And by the time I peaked, I was just getting a PTSD flashback of my overdose that sent me to rehab. I thought it was going to happen again right now, since I thought I was actually dead. I'm sure it was about 10 hours, but it felt like a week of suffering the whole trip. Sounds horrible, but honestly it taught me so much about this amazing substance. It punished me, but once I came out of that trip, I could appreciate life to a different extent, since I learnt how death feels and how much more there actually is to this world we live in. Writing this up, I was shaking the whole time, but by the end I wasn't anymore. I had to share this experience as it was too much weight on my chest. Thank you all so much if you read the whole thing. 12-gram mushroom trip report from last night by the user Scooby Indigo, posted 2 years ago to the Psychonauts subreddit. Okay, to start this stuff off, let me just say there is no easy way to explain what this trip really was. There honestly is no human words that can explain that trip, except it was absolutely ape sacks. I had the intention to take those 12 grams and meditate and have a crazy inner journey. But let me tell you how naive I was to the power of these mushrooms. They completely destroyed any perception of anything. I was in my own room, in my own bed, and I was tripping so much sax I didn't even know where I was. I was starting to lose sense of any reality and lose my entire grip on the sanity of my mind. But in a good way, I guess. I met God, I met the devil, and everything in between. I probably experienced every human emotion possible in the span of 30 minutes. I definitely would not recommend doing that high of a dose unless you are absolutely comfortable with yourself and ready to face the inner chaos that you just can't see sober. It opens up the door to some raw parts of the psyche, and let me tell you what, that shit is raw as hell. We're all capable of so much beauty and so much love, but every single one of us is absolutely capable of pure destruction and evil. But it's how it has to be, I guess. The yin-yang of the universe's law. Anyway, sorry if that stuff is all over the place. Like I said, there's really no way to explain that trip very easily. And to any others thinking about doing a heroic dose like that, just know that this stuff is no joke whatsoever. You have to be fully comfortable feeling insane with no grip on your reality. But I guess that's what I love about mushrooms. I'm naturally a little bit crazy by nature, and very comfortable with who I am. So, it was a very good trip overall, honestly. But do I recommend doing that large of a dose? Not at all. It was fun for me, and I guess I would do it again. But please, don't follow in my footsteps. "12 grams of enlightenment, entering full non-duality." A post from shroomery.org, posted the 5th of May, 2020. This trip happened about 2 years ago. After 7 years of using psilocybin, it stands out as unique in depth, intensity, and insight. I love the shroomery, and just wanted to share my experience with the community. So I decided to take 12 dry grams. I worked my way up to this dose over a long period of time, where I tripped once every few months, kept on upping my dosage, seeing how much I could stand. I don't really recommend this dose for the casual or inexperienced user at all. I built up a lot of trust in myself and the compound over years of experience before this point. There is a great deal of psychological risk involved if you don't know what you're getting into. But anyway, I was tripping at home and planned to lock myself in my room for the whole day so that I had a controlled environment with no distractions. I steeped the mushrooms in water and drank it as a tea, then waited in anticipation. The come-up was extremely overpowering. Typical body tension, anxiety, racing thoughts, fast heart rate, purging, very uncomfortable in both body and mind. I was forced to lie down on my bed. These massive jolts of energy ran through my whole body from head to foot. The awareness of my inner body became very intense. I could feel the valve in my stomach opening and closing and food moving through my intestines. At one point I got up from my bed to attempt to walk to the washroom. I almost didn't make it to the door. For only the second time ever in all my tripping, I was so skull-fucked I was having trouble physically operating my body. The attempt to walk was bizarre, disorienting and difficult, but I did manage to get it done, thankfully. My memory of the later parts of the come-up are a bit blurry, until all of a sudden, there I was. Enlightenment, or full non-dual awareness crept up on me slowly without me even noticing, until all of a sudden it became absolutely impossible to ignore. I've been interested in Buddhist philosophy for a long time, and established a meditation practice. Suddenly all my ideas and concepts became a lived reality. The illusion of free will dropped away completely, and absolutely every part of my experience became effortless and automatic. Everything was flow, happening by itself, without any need to exert will or effort. Whether thoughts or physical motion, everything moved on its own, of its own accord. At the same time, my sense of self-identity entered ultimate synesthesia. I became everything and nothing simultaneously. This was at least the second greatest moment of my life. It was the feeling of complete psychological freedom. Finally free from attachment to the conventional sense of self, of being the man in the machine responsible for keeping everything functioning. Finally, I could simply relax and let everything happen effortlessly. I could sit back and enjoy the rest of my life. Smoked some marijuana during this experience, and towards the end of the day I was still tripping heavy, and I even think the marijuana contributed to me becoming delusional. I started experiencing synchronicities in my environment that corresponded to my thoughts. I started to believe the whole world was a simulation, that time was moving backward, and that the singularity was about to occur, and that I was literally about to enter the fifth dimension and become God. It was a severe mindfuck and not of any particular value to me. As I slowly came down late in the evening, I was forced to consider that I was not in fact God, and was actually quite human. I seriously considered knocking on my roommate's door to ask him what year, country and universe we were in. That was how far gone I was. I was having to accept and come back to my sober life, and it was very hard to accept and even somewhat traumatizing. The trip wasn't bad, but the human brain is just not equipped to deal with this kind of intensity. It was like experiencing a year of life in half a day. It was extremely abnormal. After this trip, I had an almost 2-month afterglow. Best 6 or 7 weeks of my life by far. Due to some health problems, I haven't done any large trips since, but I'm looking forward to getting back into it as soon as possible. Here in my normal life, I'm once again locked in standard egoic consciousness, and it's a burden I am eager to be ridden of. I continue with meditation and microdosing, and they do help me make it easier to bear. I feel a sense of presence and unity that I never used to feel in my life before meditation and psychedelics. With just a little bit of relaxing and focusing on my experience, my identity merges with everything again. The world becomes paper thin and utterly meaningful. Anyway, happy tripping, fellow Shroomerites.